Hi, good morning. Thanks for joining us today. On today's discussion of DHAP-Ike and all things DHAP, we've got Nicholas Hickman here with us, who will be discussing DIS updates, and any questions that you have throughout the course of our broadcast that you might have on DIS. He'll be answering those questions as they come in. We've also got with us Teresa Palladino, who will be giving us an update on program and policies, FAQs that we've received, as well as case management information. So if you should have any questions on any of those topics, also please email or call in and let us know, and we'll be happy to address them. I'd like to start off with a couple of numbers for DHAP-Ike. Total number of cases ever referred to the program were 51,857. Of that, 12,627 were homeowners who were referred back to FEMA because they didn't need assistance of this program. Currently, we have 6,033 active Case A's, or families who are under DRSCs. Another number that's also pretty impressive is 19,248. That's the number of EOPs. These are families that you have all, at one point or another, worked with, touched, addressed, or given assistance to, that have either been ruled out of the program out of their own will, they've moved on, other housing options, other choices, etc., or they've not been found eligible for continued assistance in the program. Out of that, let's see, 3,018 of them were specifically termination of family violations overall. I'd like to take a quick minute and say that we really appreciate the accuracy with which you've been trying to capture these EOPs, because they really, as I've said many times before, tell the story of DHAP and the families that we serve. So thank you very much. Our 6,033 breaks down into 2,013 Case A's in Louisiana, and even 4,000 in Texas, and 20 Case A's throughout the nation, and that breaks down to Arkansas, California, Georgia, Iowa, Illinois, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. Thank you all for your continued participation in our program. Some interesting statistics on the families that we serve. As you know, the information that we've been able to gather through DHAP-Ike has been incredibly impressive, and it exceeds the information that we'd been able to collect through DHAP-Katrina. And it's because of this information that we are able to really be able to explain to FEMA, our partner agencies, and the administration as they ask us questions about the public and continued need. Population characteristics, and this is on the PSR report, which was recently posted to the web, and I'd just like to take a second and read some numbers that I think might be of interest. Out of the 6,033, the population that we have as current Case A families, elderly, based on date of birth, are listed as 553. Disabled, based on self-reported in the DHAP-Ike needs assessment, 1,706. Elderly and disabled, 288. Non-elderly disabled, 1,418. And total number of households who are currently on IRT hardship exemptions, 5,508. Out of that, we have families with no income, 986 families with no income. Now, these statistics are, as I mentioned, really important because, again, they help us make the case for what we will do with the future of DHAP, whether it be extensions or conversions, or when the states ask how the populations are able to move on. And as you see by our numbers here, 5,508 families on IRT exemptions and 6,033 families currently in the program. There'll be a couple of families throughout the next couple of months who will fall off due to attrition. And we just ask that we really look at those families and make sure that their IRT calculation had been calculated correctly, that their income has been looked at correctly, because that's still quite a few families that are yet to come off the program. And we'd really have to make sure that the calculations are being done correctly so that when we are asked again how these families are coping or what we're doing with them, we're able to really give a 100% answer. But again, thank you for the information that you're able to capture. This leads me into one of the biggest questions that we continue to get, which is the status of the conversion vouchers. We have yet to receive any information on an approval or a denial of our request for conversion vouchers. As you all know, we've got midterm elections coming up, and that's kept quite a few people up here are pretty busy in DC, so we've yet to hear anything. The minute that we do, we assure you we will let you know as quickly as possible. We understand that it was in both write-ups for the House and the Senate, so it is an issue that they are taking seriously or that they have considered as well, but we've got no answer just yet. And as soon as we do, we will let you know via email, phone call. We'll contact you however we can. Nick Hickman will talk in a minute about information that we're collecting in preparation for this, should the conversion come to fruition and we actually get it. One thing we can talk about right now is the extension, the DHAP-Ike extension. As you know, we've been approved for an extension, and the program goes through March 2011. And while we don't have the paperwork just yet, we're waiting on final signatures here and final signatures from FEMA, we will be able to send out the documents by close of business today, and that would include letters to landlords, letters to tenants, your new information on the modification, and all new program information and additional documents that are in there. Now, what the extension means to you right now is we do not need new grant agreements from you. There is nothing new to sign. The grant agreements that we'd previously used, the language that's written in there would take us through this extension. However, there will be a call out. You will be contacted by our staff and you will be asked about your participation in the program. And you can either call us or we will reach out to you. And it's through that confirmation from you that we will continue your participation in the program. Should you choose not to continue participating in DHAP-Ike, please let us know as quickly as possible so that we can reassign these families accordingly. In Louisiana, that would go through LA, Pilgrim's Rest, and everywhere else throughout the nation, that would be DHAP USA. So please let us know as quickly as you can if you've decided not to continue participating with DHAP-Ike. The documents, once we receive them, if you have any additional questions, they will be posted to the website. But if you have any additional questions, do not hesitate to give us a call or to email the DHAP-Ike mailbox. All questions that come in are addressed as quickly as we possibly can get answers to you, and they help us put together our FAQs. As you saw with the previous extension, there were FAQs that were put together for that extension, and we will have a couple of FAQs for this one as well. There are no real changes. Any family who was eligible continues to be eligible in the program. We are not taking any new referrals. And as before with the other extension, families that may have been EOP'd, as long as it's not a for-cause reason and it's something that your PHA determines they cannot come back into the program, should be eligible to come back into the program. And if you have any questions, give us a call and we'll help you, sort through what to do with some of these cases. Okay. One last thing to know. With the initial payment, once we receive the funding from FEMA, you will receive 3 months HAP, 3 months case management, and 1 month admin fee. Okay? All fees that were currently accrued or earned through the previous extensions in the existing program will remain the same, and as per the regular program, case management will still be part of this extension and will still be required, but you will get 3 months of HAP payments and 3 months of case management fees pushed out all at once, and 1 month's admin fees. If you have any questions on that, please contact me, please call us, please email us, and we will be happy to discuss any of the financial questions that you might have. With this, I go to a couple of questions that we've received in the field that have a little bit to do with DIS and a little bit to do with deposits and end of program. Number 1, for families that have moved before knowing about the extension, will help be provided security and utility deposits when they return to the program? Yes, but it would be on a case by case. We'd have to actually look at the situation. We understand that with the delays in notification, families tend to do what's best for them, and that sometimes means moving out of a situation that they don't think they'll be able to financially handle. So if you have a situation where a family moved out of their unit out of fear that the program would not be extended, please contact us and we'll help you with the utility deposit and the security information and what the next steps are for that. In many cases, we understand that families didn't necessarily have the means to move or want to move, but when you look at our numbers with the 5,000 plus who are on IRT hardship exemptions, it should be something we could easily reconcile and look into. The move was a necessary one, not one out of ability to pay for one's own. Next question. Will another DRSC lease addendum be required for this extension also? Yes, we are sending them out, and we will work with you. We understand that in some cases you have landlords who are not there locally. You have to mail them out. It takes a while to get them back. The more we know about your specific situations within your PHAs and about the documentation and the process it takes to get the documentation, the better we can prepare when these questions come up during file reviews and IG audits. I know that we've talked to several PHAs throughout the several states, and they've let us know that they've had difficulty getting these addendums signed for the previous extensions because they've got landlords who are hard to contact or who are not in state or not in town. And so when we know that information, we can definitely make note of it and cite it when asked. But yes, it is something that we would like for you to continue to reach out and have updated and signed. The next question. Will the same requirement for continued eligibility and case management be in effect for the extension until March 2011? Yes, absolutely. Continued eligibility and case management is still a requirement for the extension. Nothing has changed on this extension. It is just a continuation of the existing program, and therefore these two requirements are still in place. Next question. What is the process for changing head of household information in DIS? And the question after that is also a DIS question. So I will answer this last one and then turn it over to our resident DIS expert, Nicholas Hickman. The last question before handing it over is, will FEMA send out letters regarding the extension should PHAs expect an increase in calls from families inquiring about their eligibility for this extension? I'm not aware of any letters that FEMA will be sending out. I believe that the press release that they've sent out in this case sufficed. I'll get back to everyone on that. I don't think they were planning on sending one out to everyone. As for increased phone calls about eligibility for this extension, you may or may not receive them. Since we're not receiving new referrals, and this extension is not allowing people who were not already in our program in the program, I wouldn't see why we would receive more phone calls, but it's a good question, and it's a case by case. It depends on your footprint, and if you have people who were previously EOP'd calling you, or people who maybe hadn't completed their documentation and therefore were still pending something in your file or in the system. So that question is more based on the area, but there really should not be a reason for a spike in calls because we're not receiving any additional referrals or new referrals to the program. Now on to those DIS questions. Question number one, what is the process for changing head of household information in DIS?
Sure. Just as a reminder, as it was in the bulk of the program in the first extension, is that all head of household changes within DIS should be requested via the DHAP-Ike at HUD.gov email address. Please send in your request, work with our HUD's field representatives to make those requests, and we can research and make the proper notifications to both HUD's partners, FEMA, and maintain the data here at at HUD as well.
Excellent. Okay, and the next question. Will the program end date be updated in DIS?
Sure, and again, yes, as with the first extension, that program end date was extended out to 10/31, as well as with this extension, we will extend that date out to 3/31/2011, so that you may make your updates to your leases as well.
Excellent, and with that, we turn it over to you.
Thank you, Judith. Thanks so much. Good morning. Again, my name is Nicholas Hickman. I'm with the Resident Group. Today I'm going to discuss a couple areas, updates and changes to the DIS system, and answer any further questions you may have in regards to the program, the DIS system, any of the reconciliation that's currently underway, and this extension. The areas I'd like to address are the new data fields that have been updated or added to Ike records in DIS for the recently announced extension of DHAP-Ike, the placement fee reconciliation, and the security and utility deposit reconciliation. As part of the extension of the DHAP-Ike program ending on March 31st, 2011, housing authorities now have until March 1st, 2011 to complete a pre-screening HCV application on their Ike families and enter this information into DIS. 2 checkboxes have been added to the bottom of the Ike records, the lease records, and they're labeled HCV pre-screening application submitted, which is a checkbox, and date pre-screening application submitted, which is a date box. You just enter in a date. In order to receive the $150 incentive fee, as detailed in the first extension, both checkboxes, or excuse me, both data fields have to be filled out. The checkbox and the date field need to be filled out in order for your housing authority to receive that incentive fee per family. Additionally, an incentive fee of $100 will be provided to housing authorities that perform full HQS inspections on HCV units in advance of the program end on March 31st, 2011, for families that may transition to the HCV program. 2 data fields have been added at the bottom of the Ike lease record as well, which are labeled the HQS inspection date and HQS inspection result. The date is, again, a date box. You just enter in the date that the HQS inspection was completed. Again, we understand that there may be several instances where an inspection is performed because one, it may have failed and you have gone back to re-inspect. HUD is just looking for the most recent HQS inspection that was performed. And the other box of the result is just a drop-down menu of pass or fail, and just note whether it passed or failed. Again, for that $100 incentive fee, both boxes need to be filled out in order to be eligible to receive that $100 incentive fee per family. It is important to remember that the $100 incentive fee is a one-time fee, as I mentioned, and not for each inspection performed. When entering this information in the DIS record, again, just important to make sure you enter whether it's passed or failed the inspection. In preparation of the potential opportunity for Ike families to transition to the HCV program from DHAP, in the event that that could happen at the end of this program, additional data fields have also been added at the bottom of the DHAP-Ike lease record that have also to track the progress of converting these families to HCV if available. These fields are meant to capture the key points in the application process and include the following. The first box that has been added is full HCV application completed. Please enter the date that the full application for HCV has been completed, not just the pre-screening application. Another box is the eligibility for HCV. Please select yes or no. It's a drop-down menu. The date the RAFTA was issued. The actual field in DIS is called date RAFTA issued. That's the date that the voucher has been provided for the family to go out and look for a unit. Again, the next box is the date the RAFTA was returned. Please enter the date the family has come back with the voucher, notifying your housing authority of the unit they would like to reside or to have inspected. And then the last is the date that the HCV is finally under lease, that the family, the first day the family begins living in the unit that the lease refers to. Moving on, as for the placement fee reconciliation. HUD is in the process of wrapping up the reconciliation of placement fees. Placement fees are provided to the housing authority that assisted the family in leasing up under the DHAP-Ike program for the first time, or for an Ike family who the housing authority assisted in placing in permanent housing as indicated in the DIS record by the EOP code placed in permanent housing. DIS records eligible for placement fees are those where all 3 checkboxes are checked. These checkboxes are the family contacted, family agreed to case management, and landlord signed HAP contract, as well as the lease effective date is on or after November 1st, 2008, and a value greater than 0 is entered in the HAP total box. And for those records where an EOP reason of place in permanent housing has been selected. Recently, HUD made call-outs to all remaining PHAs that have not yet remitted their overage of funds for placement fees. If you have not yet done so, please send in the overage amount as detailed in the calculation you received to the P.O. Box address provided in the letter sent to your housing authority. As a reminder, the address is sent to Bank of America, and please be sure to put attention HUD-FAD collections in the header to make sure that the checks or the monies get appropriated to the right account. If you have any questions or need any assistance with your Housing Authority's reconciliation calculations, please contact us here at DHAP-Ike at HUD.gov. Lastly, the security and utility deposit reconciliation calculations were sent out to housing authorities a couple weeks ago. These calculations utilize both DIS and VMS information to determine any overages or underfunded amounts of security and utility deposits. These calculations compare the lesser amounts entered in DIS or VMS with the amount of funds that have already been dispersed to your housing authority. It is important to remember that the eligible leases selected from DIS are only the records of the family's first time they leased up under the DHAP-Ike program. And where a value has been entered in the security and utility deposit fields, as well as the criteria, as I mentioned before, that all 3 checkboxes are checked. The lease effective date is greater than November 1st, 2008, and a value greater than 0 is entered in the HAP total field. Additionally, the data selected from VMS in the paid and returned sections or categories of the security and utility deposits section. Please remember to only enter data in the paid section if a deposit was made on behalf of the family, and only enter data into the return section if the deposit was paid and has been returned to your housing authority. If you have any questions or need any assistance with your housing authority's reconciliation calculations, again, please contact us here at the DHAP-Ike email address. Thank you again for all your efforts and your hard work, and I'll now pass it over to Teresa.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. As Judith mentioned earlier, I'd like to briefly discuss some highlights from case management, and then we'll recap today's broadcast with some frequently asked questions and some policy updates that both Judith and Nick touched on earlier. Okay, so case management. Over the weekend of October 5th, the ETO system went through some upgrades. The software was down for a short time, and we do apologize for that inconvenience. As you may be aware, there have been some subtle changes to the login screen. If you have any issues, please contact your InfoPath representative. In September, instructions were provided on how to retrieve archived data within ETO for the purposes of the closeout. The instructions have been placed on the home page of the administration screen in ETO. This information can be retrieved from the following areas: assigned families, contact attempts, IDP efforts, and referral information. If you have any questions or difficulties, your InfoPath representative will be more than happy to assist you in the process. Please also review the custom reports section of the software. New custom reports extracting various sets of data have been added. For example, the referral status by staff report will allow the point of contact to pull a detailed report for an individual case manager's caseload that contains all the information on referrals made, name of referred agency, and the status of the referral. Go-to meetings are available to PHAs as a form of technical assistance provided by InfoPath. If your PHA is in need of a live demonstration of the tracking tool processes, PHAs can request a meeting with an assigned TA to walk you through the issues. Again, please refer back to your InfoPath representative for this technical assistance. Due to the program extension, PHAs should continue with timely quarterly client reassessments and recommended tier level contacts. Minimum quarterly reassessments require updating the data regarding income, employment, and employment readiness. HUD recommends that while the PHA is updating the DRSC, please obtain signatures on updated IDP, releases of information, and all required paperwork. Again, when updating the DRSC, please obtain signatures on the IDP, releases of information, and all required paperwork. While not required, HUD strongly recommends that the PHA obtains signature of needs assessments as proof of contact. PHAs are required to submit a deficiency corrective action plan to their assigned TA within 10 days of receipt of the case management monitoring report that is emailed directly to the point of contact. When adding referral sources to ETO, please be specific. A review was recently completed of referral sources in the system, and it was found there was very little description noted in some of the referrals. For example, there was simply a name with no identification or title of the individual or referral source. For instance, if a referral is made to a car mechanic, a physical therapist, please note the information when adding the referral source. Notification of system upgrades to software will be posted on the ETO website or be sent via email, the email message system. Take care to regularly check these messages in ETO for the information related to case management program. During site visits, HUD staff continues to find referrals are not followed up on or resolved. Once a referral is made, it should be reviewed and updated every 30 days until the referral is resolved. This data is a key metric in identifying program success, so it's important to identify the final referral outcome when it is reached. Given the stage we're in now in the DHAP-Ike program, it is extremely important to have most accurate and detailed information in ETO. It has been found during site visits that the income information utilized to calculate continued eligibility for the program is oftentimes different than what is being reported in the needs assessment. Please ensure this information is consistent, as the data in ETO is what is utilized to make determinations about potential ongoing housing assistance for families. As always, your diligent efforts in providing services to DHAP-Ike populations are greatly appreciated. Please keep up the good work. And to assist you in keeping up that good work, we'll segue into some frequently asked questions and some policy updates. Again, some of these issues were touched on by Judith and Nick, but we'll just go ahead and recap. Eligibility for DHAP-Ike continuous assistance through the extension. Families that have been EOP'd for cause, i.e. violation of family obligations, or because they became ineligible through income, cannot be readmitted to the DHAP-Ike program. Families that voluntarily left the program could have returned to receive rental assistance at a later date, but had to enter a DRSC and receive a rental assistance payment in the month of March 2010 in order to be eligible for the DHAP-Ike extension. Families that did not meet the deadline are no longer eligible for the DHAP-Ike program. The only narrow exception to this rule is when a family moved out or vacated their unit out of fear of the conclusion of the program in October. Again, Judith touched on that issue, families vacating their units thinking that they could not afford to stay. Again, please contact HUD if you find that your PHA is in that position, or if you know of families that are in that position. Please contact HUD through the DHAP-Ike@HUD.gov email address. For further and more detailed information on eligibility, you can also refer back to our DHAP-Ike FAQs, in specific number 64 and number 89. Deposits. If a family ends its participation in DHAP and the family is still living in the original unit, the PHA should notify the landlord that the family is no longer participating in the program, especially if the security deposits were paid on that family's behalf by the PHA. Security deposits need to be repaid to the PHA when the family leaves the unit, as the funds must be returned to the federal government. Until the family vacates the unit, the landlord is not required to return such funds. Again, for further clarification or detail, please refer back to our released FAQs in specific number 52. Identification documentation. DHAP-Ike requirements do not specifically detail what forms of identification are required. However, PHAs should have sufficient identification documentation in their files that ensure the individual being served is indeed the individual that was referred to HUD by FEMA. Government-issued IDs are preferable, but again, the requested documentation is at the discretion of the PHA. Can a PHA require families to provide documentation of citizenship or eligible immigrant status in order to receive DHAP-Ike assistance? I know that in previous broadcasts this issue has been touched on. Again, it's also in our FAQs, but it has reoccurred since then. So the answer is no. Initial eligibility for DHAP-Ike assistance is determined solely by FEMA, not the PHA. While PHAs are restricted from assisting ineligible immigrants in the HCV program, this restriction does not apply to DHAP-Ike, which is authorized under a separate statute. Once FEMA refers a family to DHAP-Ike, a PHA cannot decide that the family is ineligible because of their immigration status. Family composition. When reviewing your files, PHAs should be checking to ensure that the family members listed in the file match those that are listed in DIS. If the family composition has changed, the PHA should ensure it has adjusted the rent subsidy correctly. If some of the original family members have left the household, the PHA may have been required to reduce the rental subsidy at the family's next move, depending on the circumstances of the reduced family size. Please refer to DHAP operating requirements in specific pages 18 through 19 for the complete rules. In general, when determining the family unit size under the PHA subsidy standards for purposes of determining the applicable FMR payment standard to calculate the family's initial DHAP rent subsidy payment, the PHA always uses the smaller of. Again, you can refer back to pages 18 through 19 of the SOPs. If I'm not clear, I apologize. But again, you should use the smaller of the family unit size for which the original composition of the family qualifies under the PHA subsidy standards, or the family unit size for which the current composition of the family now qualifies under the PHA subsidy standards. Again, as Judith mentioned earlier, we have been receiving some questions regarding a possible conversion. She pretty much told you all that we have to offer at this moment, but please do continue to email your questions and concerns regarding a possible conversion to DHAP-Ike at HUD.gov, so that way you can be apprised and updated accordingly and be prepared for any possible conversion. Judith?
Great, thanks, Teresa. I understand we have a couple of email questions that have come in. Oh, there you go. Question is, I was wondering if by any chance your office has a DHAP-Ike audit checklist that could be provided to us. We would like to use it to audit our DHAP-Ike files. Anything you could provide to assist us would be greatly appreciated. We don't have an actual checklist. It's something that we've been working on with the PHAs from the file reviews that we've had. And I think, Nick, if you have anything to add to this, from the audits that have been conducted by HUD and by FEMA, we've gathered information that commonalities that they both look for and things that we look for in the files. So we can send that to you. I know that's something that we have a general checklist of documents and items that in the past they've mentioned should be in there, and that programmatically we've decided should be in there to be able to determine eligibility. Is there anything you'd like to add? Or
I would just echo the sentiments. Yeah, that checklist is what is used for the general purposes of identifying what should be in those files.
Exactly, and it's a checklist that we let the auditors who go out know that it's what we use when we review your files, so we'll be happy to share that with you. I know that we'd previously sent one out, I think it was early this year, and it had a couple of things on there that some PHAs wrote back to us and said, I don't know what this means, or I don't feel good about this, or I don't think this document should be in there, and we've taken those concerns and adjusted the checklist accordingly, and we'll send this out as well again to everyone. And please use it, because we think that it's as we think it's pretty good. And again, we've used it along with what the auditors have told us that they're looking for, although they don't share their actual checklist with us. But if you have any questions, as those of you who expressed before with the original checklist that went out, please let us know, and we'll continue to tweak it to make sure that it's A, it's understood, and B, it's logical, and C, it's in compliance with what we need in those files. So we'll send that out to you as well. I don't think I'll be able to send it out with the extension documents, so look for a separate email on that, and we'll send it out to you. The next question is, when will HUD update the program end date in DIS? Will HUD automatically extend the HAP contract termination date for active clients to coincide with the program end date? And to that?
We'll potentially follow the similar pattern that HUD used for the first extension. The program end date will, yes, be extended out to March 31st, 2011. As for the lease termination dates, those dates HUD will consider as or presume that all leases that are active today will be extended out through March 31st, 2011. However, it will be placed upon your housing authority to go in as you are updating your records to update those lease termination dates when that information becomes available, such as a family. HUD can assume that the family is going to be in the unit until March 31st, 2011. However, a family may exit the unit in January. It would still be upon your housing authority to go in there and change that termination date. So in the meantime, again, HUD will view all the leases as the lease termination date be out to March 31st, 2011, but the housing authority should go in between now and March 31st, 2011 and change those lease termination dates to the appropriate date that should mirror your DRSC or the lease amendment. That's it.
Great, thank you. We have another question. What are the criteria for a family to be readmitted to DHAP-Ike? A family that was over income due to a family member, that family member has recently moved out of the household. Can the household income be reevaluated at this time and readmit? It's a great question. Teresa, do you have any guidance on that?
And I would like to go back and again refer back to our SOPs and our FAQs before I give a definitive answer. This issue has come up in the past with DHAP-Ike families who are EOP'd due to assessment of income, and then left the program and subsequently had a change in their income. At that time, this is again through DHAP-Ike's regularly standard operating procedures, no, that family was not allowed back into the program. Again, their needs became that of a situation other than disaster relief. So again, it's a very good question. I'd be more comfortable pulling the exact verbiage that we put out already on that question. And we could probably email that out with anything that we send out regarding the file review. So any questions that we cannot thoroughly address right here and right now, we'll send out again with in a follow-up email.
And thanks for answering that, because I know that in the past you'd had experience with that question coming up, and that question has come up in other forms. In some cases, it's not so much the family member that's left the household. It's been a family member had their hours reduced or lost their job or something. And as you mentioned, while difficult and while those are hardship cases or situations, they're not exactly disaster related, and therefore it's very difficult for us to justify bringing them back into the program when we are audited by FEMA and the DHS-Ike auditor, because the main thing that they look for, as you mentioned, is that it be disaster related, attributed directly to the disaster. And in a case like that, if you were to contact us about it, that would be the main defining criteria for looking at readmittance. Is it disaster related? A family member, household income, we'd have to definitely speak to the PHA one-on-one about this. And some of these cases are just so gray, but our defining criteria for that has to be disaster related. So as Teresa mentioned, we'll put together something and send it out to you, because this is a situation that's popped up many times, but each time has kind of a different twist to it. We've got another question. How can the PHA inspect a unit for the HCV HQS inspection when the family may not live at that unit under the HCV program? Many families are housed under Ike in units that they will not be able to lease under HCV due to affordability issues. It's a great question, and it's one that I think we can kind of answer in general because we're not quite there yet, and I just really want to make sure that we not take any big steps towards conversion since it's not something that's been committed to us as something that's going to happen. Speaking about this in theory, we understand that there are many families who through Ike are living in units that would not pass inspection, and this is attributed to multiple things. Affordability as mentioned there, and also availability, and availability in areas to where they have now built their lives around. So with that in mind, we ask that when you look at that and you look at the inspection, it's a conversation that the PHA have with that family because should conversion happen, that family needs to know point blank, this unit would not pass inspection. And it's something that, it's kind of a tough conversation to have, but one of the reasons I don't necessarily want us to start addressing that just yet is because it's not something we can decide without involving the family in that, because it, in many cases, would require them to move from that unit into another unit, which would, as seen there, generate an inspection, and to even begin to discuss that with the family involved would give, I guess, premature hope that the conversion has been approved. So while it's a great question, it's not one that I think we're ready yet to tackle, and believe me, it is one that's been asked many, many times, and it's something that we actually have guidance on. And we can also look back to our Katrina experience and reach for guidance that we'd had from there. But I appreciate that question being brought up, but I just would like to say that we're not quite there yet to begin to answer that, because again, a situation like that really involves the family, and messaging to them that moving may have to happen for them to be able to participate in this program. And since we're not there yet, I wouldn't want to give anyone, whether it be a PHA or a family, any expectations that we have a definitive answer on this just yet. So I hope that makes sense, and if it doesn't, please email us or call us. Email the DHAP-Ike mailbox and demand a better explanation. I don't know. But anyway, I understand there are no more questions. Excellent. Well, we thank you again for joining us, and as always, thank you for all the questions that you send us, and look forward to seeing you again next month. Thank you.